What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Tropical storm Helene has formed. It formed earlier this morning, and now it's on a collision course for Florida, and we're already seeing some very early signs of rapid organization and potential intensification along with it. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to that. We also have an area of interest out here in the Atlantic Ocean over here that we're going to be keeping a bit of a sideshow on, but the main focus, of course, will be on Helene, so we are going to continue our focus on that, and we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Let's go ahead and start right here with Tropical Storm Helene. Pull that up for you right here. Here's the current situation right here. This is going to be updated by the time this video goes out, but here's the cliff notes. Maximum sustained winds are at 45 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is 999 millibars. That will drop to 998 at the next advisory. Not 100% sure on how those winds are going to go at that current point. Tropical storm force winds extend outward 140 miles from the center. Data from a NOAA buoy indicates that the minimum central pressure is 999 millibars, and we have a lot of risks to talk about in terms of this affecting land. We have storm surge watches in effect for Indian Pass down south in Florida. Let's go ahead and pull up the cone. We have hurricane watches in effect for much of Florida right here. We have hurricane watches in effect from Apalachicola Bay to near Lee County in Florida. We also have hurricane watches in effect for parts of the Yucatan Peninsula and the Pinar del Rio region of Cuba. Tropical storm warnings are in effect for the Isle of Youth, parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, Pinar del Rio, and areas east, as well as the Florida Keys. And tropical storm watches are in effect for Lee, Collier, and Monroe counties, as well as parts of the Florida Panhandle over to the west. So we have a lot to talk about today as we continue to show you the potential risks, the potential threats that we're paying attention to. Let's go ahead and read a little bit of discussion very quickly. An Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft measured a peak 925 millibar flight level winds at 952 knots to the northeast of the center, which supports an initial intensity of 40 knots. Dropsun data also indicates that the pressure was down to 1,000 millibars. This was at 11 a.m. this morning, so I want to make that perfectly clear. Very recently, data from the plane and 1-minute visible satellite imagery indicate that the center has become better defined. It's now Tropical Storm Helene. That was this morning. Satellite trends suggest that the shear is beginning to decrease, with model guidance continue to show relatively low to moderate shear for the next 48 hours or so. In addition, ocean heat content values are very high, and the system will be moving through an environment of upper-level divergence. Therefore, significant strengthening is anticipated, and the NHC intensity forecast shows the system with a peak around 100 knots in 48 hours while over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There could be some increase in shear around the system as it reaches the coast. Given the system's large size, it might only weaken slowly. As a result, there is still a risk that this system could reach the coast as a major hurricane. Helene's forecast radii are in the 90th percentile of hurricane size at similar latitudes. Due to the forecast large size of the system, storm surge, wind, and rainfall impacts will extend well away from the center, particularly on the east side. In addition, the fast forward speed while it crosses the coast will likely result in further inland penetration of strong winds over parts of the southeastern United States at landfall. So that's the stuff we're looking at. They're expecting it to get to 115 miles per hour at this current point in time. I personally think that it's going to get a bit stronger than that, maybe 120, 125 at this current point. I think a Category 4 is not out of the question either, considering the fact that the system is finally starting to get its act together, and we're seeing a bunch of convection really start to burst up and allow for the first wave of this to really ramp up. Storm surge was one of the things that was mentioned here. Look at the storm surge for the Big Bend region from the Ochalockonee River over here in the Big Bend, all the way down to north of Tampa Bay, near Chaz. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. I'm completely sorry about that. But Hawatska, I apologize for butchering that. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge right here. And for 6 to 10 feet of surge from here to the Ancolti River north of Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is getting 5 to 8 feet of storm surge right there. which may not seem like a lot in comparison to what we're seeing in the Big Bend, but in Tampa Bay, 5 to 8 feet of storm surge can cause significant damage due to how low-lying the region is over there. And considering that this system is going to funnel all that water into Tampa Bay, we're going to have a situation where storm surge values are going to be really up there, and we have to also watch for high tide and low tide as well to see how this system progresses. 5 to 10 feet from Indian Pass to the Big Bend over here, 4 to 7 feet from Inglewood to the Tampa Bay region, 3 to 5 feet throughout much of the Florida coast from Inglewood all the way down to through Monroe County, and 1 to 3 feet expected in the Florida Keys. So what I'm looking at right now, storm surge is the greatest threat with this by far. Winds are also a great threat as well, but storm surge is the greatest threat. Not just with hurricanes, not just with this rather, but in hurricanes in general. And 10 to 15 feet of storm surge is something you do not want to scoff at. That's pretty much an entire one-story building that gets swallowed alive by that. So now that you know what we're dealing with right here, here's the rainfall potential that we're looking at right here. We're looking at 8 to 12 inches of rain through much of Florida over here, and we're also looking at potentially 12 to 16 inches of rain in the Appalachian Mountains over here as the system pushes further inland. And this rain is expected to encompass as far north as Springfield, Illinois. 2 to 4 inches of rain are expected in St. Louis, Springfield. This is going to be a very expansive system at the end of the day, and we are going to have to watch this in earnest and pay very close attention to this down the road. There's also another area of interest over here I will briefly talk about. Right now, satellite surface wind data from earlier today showed a broad open trough associated with a tropical wave located near the Cabo Verde Islands. Environmental conditions appear favorable for gradual development of the system, and a tropical depression is likely to form in a few days while it moves westward to west-northwestward across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. 40% probability in the next 48 hours, 80% in the next 7 days. So that's something we are going to have to watch and pay attention to right there. We also, now that we've gone over this, let's go ahead and show you the satellite imagery that we have pulled up. These are the latest frames that we have for you right here. Here's the situation that we have. Let's go ahead and play this back for you a little bit. This convection has been really bursting up over the last hour and a half or so, and before the center was generally pretty exposed, and it wasn't showing that many signs of organization and development. There were signs there, but not rapid organization or anything like that. Now we're seeing a gigantic burst of convection across the center of circulation. That last burst right there, that's continuing to organize and develop right over the center of circulation. And we're also seeing other bursts of convection here at the south, here at the southeast, here south of the core, and here are areas in the north. And if you zoom out of this a little bit, it is starting to look maybe a little bit like that shrimp shape we always like to talk about, at least to a small scale. It's starting to look more the part right now, and we're absolutely going to have to pay attention to that now. I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page to give you the latest frames from this right here. Let's go ahead and show you the infrared. Yeah, this is really starting to go off right here, and we're starting to see that potential shrimp shape right here as this system continues to organize, starts to mix out all this dry air stuff going on over here. There's not much really dry air in this or anything like that, but it's starting to finally connect and start to develop a core that's going to be significantly stronger than what we were seeing in the past. So that's what we're paying attention to with the satellite imagery right here. I wanted to bring that up, seizure warning, just giving you a heads up with that. But regardless of that, things are starting to escalate, and this has just been the last couple of hours, and we have a lot to talk about today as things continue to ramp up and the Florida coast continues to have a greater and greater threat attached to it. In the meantime, though, let's go ahead and show you some track models and the intensity while we're waiting for this. Let's go ahead and show you Tropical Storm Helene. Track models want the system to make a very close pass to the Yucatan Peninsula before moving up to Florida, near the Big Bend region of Florida. There's been a noticeable shift to the west, which puts more of the Florida Panhandle in the line of fire. Before, we've seen a shift further and further to the east, which put more of Tampa Bay in the line of fire. Now, with the 18Z, we're starting to see a significant trend to the west as well. We saw this for the last couple of runs. We're seeing more of a westward shift with this, as Tropical Storm John is pulling this system closer to the Yucatan Peninsula and then approaching Florida in the next 2.5 to 3 days. So That's what we're looking at with the track models. Intensity models, Category 1, Category 2 is the consensus for some of these runs right here. Major hurricane strength is what's anticipated over here. However, with the new data that's starting to come in with more information and seeing this huge burst of convection and a better organization overall on satellite, I do expect these intensity runs to explode and potentially get up to Category 3, Category 4 strength with that. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to that as well. We are also paying attention to the Cayman. We were paying attention to the Cayman Islands radar last night. I'm going to see if some of it is still in there. Yeah, some of it is still in there, but it's not showing that core that we were seeing last night. So we're not going to really be using that anymore and starting to condense things down as we get more data and information for you guys. Let's go ahead and show you the conditions that's ahead of it, because I think if I paint the picture of what the conditions are going to be ahead of it, we're going to have a much better situation and a much better look as to how this is going to evolve and play out right here. Let's go ahead and start with the conditions right here with the global sea surface temperatures. Global sea surface temperatures, there's no question in my mind that this is very hot. There's no question in my mind that this is going to have a lot of water to tread and a lot of water to work with. We're looking at 30 plus degrees Celsius waters, 31 degrees Celsius waters across a lot of these areas where it's going to be heading to. The loop current, where this system is expected to fully be encompassed in and fully be a part of, is going to be in an area of about 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be bringing a ton of ocean heat content. Remember, the National Hurricane Center in their latest discussion was mentioning OHC right here. Ocean heat content values are very high, and the system will be moving through an environment of upper level divergence. Two very key recipes for rapid strengthening right now as we continue to look at this. So that's what we're looking at, and we can show you the ocean heat content right now. OHC continues to be absolutely astronomical. It's well over 180, and where it's at right now, it's cracking 200 OHC as it continues to make that westward approach towards the Yucatan before starting to make that turn to the north and head towards Florida. But look where it's going. It's going throughout the entire loop current, and it has a gigantic eddy over here of over 200 OHC that the system's going to fully tap into. And from then on out, we're going to have to see how this whole thing plays out. But regardless of, though, we're seeing OHC of at least 180 across the entire track of this until it gets closer to the Big Bend of Florida, where it starts to calm down to about 100 or so, and then it really dies down due to the shallowness of the area right there. But regardless of that, we are seeing a lot of OHC, and these are going to be some of the best conditions I have seen all season. Beryl definitely had some really good conditions as well, but these are going to be arguably better conditions than what we were seeing with Beryl, especially in that part of the Caribbean Sea where Beryl was just fighting all that wind shear and slowly getting chipped away. It used all that OHC it had over there to kind of stay alive, but it eventually fell apart as it got closer to the Yucatan Peninsula and made landfall over there as a Category 2 hurricane. Regardless of that, though, something to pay attention to, something to watch. Let's go ahead and show you the wind shear. Look at what's going on right now. That trough I was telling you about merged with the main trough up here in the southeastern United States, and it's in an area of very low wind shear. This is going to be something we're going to have to watch, guys. This is something where all the ingredients are finally coming together all at once in the worst possible time. We have very low wind shear, 10 knots of it, matter of fact. We have OHC of over 200 in some of these areas. We also have a lot of moisture as well to take a look at. Let's go ahead and zoom in on Tropical Storm Helene and then move to the water vapor imagery as well. I'm sorry, my nose has been itching all day. And here's the water vapor. The southern Gulf of Mexico is starting to moisten up quite a bit due to the outflow of Helene. Remember what I was telling you guys? I was expecting this to happen. The outflow is going to push out and really bring this Gulf of Mexico dry air out, push it out and replace it with a lot of moisture over here. And you also have the outflow of Tropical Storm John still moving into the Caribbean Sea and feeding it more and more moisture, as we were talking about on stream last night. So that's the stuff we're paying attention to at this current point. So overall, it's going to have some of the best conditions this season has to offer. 30 to 31 degrees Celsius waters, which for those of you who do not know, that's 86 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you living in Florida. You have OHC of well over 200, which is basically a measurement of how hot the water is and how deep down it goes, and wind shear of 10 to 15 knots throughout its immediate path. So things are starting to ramp up. Things are starting to go off right here. We're going to have to keep you updated, and we will be streaming tonight starting at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So I wanted to make that very clear to you guys. Seeing the latest scan of imagery, we're seeing that burst continuing to ramp up, continuing to really get its act together. It's been happening for the last couple of hours, actually, which interestingly enough. Also still waiting for the public advisory from the National Hurricane Center. It should be out shortly after I am done recording this video, so I'll defer you to that once the new advisory comes out. So let's go ahead and show you some hurricane models now. We're going to show you the H-WRF, the halves A, halves B, and the H-MON. We're going to start with the H-WRF. The 12Z runs have come out, and they have been significantly weaker compared to what we were at previously. The H-WRF wants the system to get to Category 3 strength, maybe Category 4 strength, as it approaches the Big Bend of Florida as a 942 millibar system. Where were we at 0Z? 922 millibars. Right there, 6Z, 922. Now we're down up to 942 millibars. That is some generally good news with that, but considering the fact that this system is starting to organize and doing it, quite frankly, at the perfect time, as it's going to start hugging the Yucatan coast and use that land interaction to help tighten up the pressure gradient quite a bit more. We could see a situation where this just rapidly escalates all the way up to land, and that's my main concern with this. Let's show you the H-MON. The 12Z H-MON has this system rapidly strengthening, moves just off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, 981 millibar Category 1 hurricane. Then it moves further to the north, starts to really ramp up in intensity, gets down to a 943 millibar Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane, makes landfall, really brings in a lot of rain and winds to Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Matter of fact, if you're in southern Georgia, you should also be preparing for this, because this system is going to expand further inland and potentially bring hurricane force winds to southern Georgia. Let me go ahead and take a look at the cone real quickly, the new experimental. Hurricane watches have not been issued for southern Georgia just yet, but I do expect them to at some point today or tomorrow. So we're going to have to pay attention to that. Here's the halves A run with Helene. The halves A run wants the system to make landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula and kind of hover there for about 12 hours or so. I personally do not think that Helene is going to make landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's going to be a close pass, but Tropical Storm John is not going to pull it that far to the west for it to make a landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's going to hug the coast, which is going to help tighten the pressure gradient, but it's not going to do that much to it in terms of landfall. And then you have the system making landfall as a 969 millibar system in the Florida Big Bend, which that's the reason it's weaker like that is because it makes landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula, which I'm not really buying exactly. Same with the halves B run. Wanting the system to make landfall in the Yucatan, just stall there for 12 hours. I personally do not see that happening. I think it's going to stay off the coast of the Yucatan, but I don't think it's going to end up making landfall over there, and the vast majority of models do not anticipate that to happen. And based on the trajectory of it, it is expected to start turning in the next few hours or so, as you're going to start seeing that more of a northward shift pretty soon, and it's going to be crossing through the Yucatan Straits in that huge area of ocean heat content right there, so we're going to have to pay attention to it. Still checking for the update right there, not quite out. But one last look we can go ahead and take a look at in terms of the satellite imagery. This system's finally getting its act together. Things are starting to rapidly organize. Things are starting to finally get going over here, and the main takeaway is you need to start preparing for this right now. The state of Florida has declared a state of emergency for a lot of counties, I believe 41 so far. I expect that to expand further as the system evolves and develops. If you are told to evacuate, evacuate. If you are told to shelter in place, shelter in place. If you are told to prepare, and we will continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. Remember, if you want to come hang out with us at Storms United, be sure to join our Discord server. We are talking about Helene right now, and a link will be in the end screen. Shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor Patreon. Be sure to send some prayers to him as he is going through some surgery today. So be sure to send some prayers to him. But shout out to him for supporting the Patreon. If you want to support the Patreon, be sure to join. It's the first link in the description down below. You can either be a friend of Pat or an official sponsor. There's certain perks that you will get from that. With that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.